My friends, what you are about to see in the next few minutes subverts all the billion-dollar Western military logic and changes the balance of power in modern warfare. While the German government hesitantly authorized the delivery of about 50 Flak Panzer Gepard tanks to Ukraine back in April 2022, the world collapsed. The armchair strategists laughed. After all, Germany had already discarded and thrown this armored vehicle into the dustbin of history a decade earlier. It was a machine designed in the distant 1960s that entered service in the 1970s and was officially retired and replaced in 2010. For the suits in Berlin, the Gepard was just an old asset, obsolete, a piece of scrap metal with little value to offer. But war, my friends, war does not forgive arrogance. Ukraine took that scrap, rejected and turned that relic from decades ago into a real monster on the battlefield. They created what I call the analog Gravedigger. A brutal, heavy, no-nonsense machine that buries the most advanced drone technology of the 21st century using nothing but pure physics and kinetic fire. Today I'm going to show you how a tank that the world considered dead rose from the grave to humiliate the Russian army and become the most valuable and lethal piece in the biggest conflict in Europe. Journal National won't talk about this, but the lesson here is frightening. To understand this remarkable and brutal turnaround, you first need to understand the anatomy of the beast. What the hell is the Gepard and what is it capable of? But now, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell and leave a like on the video because it takes work to make it. The Flak Panzer Gepard, also known in the trenches as Cheetah, is not an ordinary tank. It is a self-propelled anti-aircraft system designed to operate in absolutely any weather conditions. Call it a snowstorm, rain or fog, it keeps on hunting. This means that, unlike the typical main battle tanks we know, which are designed for direct confrontation in the mud, shooting at other tanks and piercing enemy armor, among frontline armored vehicles, the Gepard was designed with a single lethal purpose: to look up. And it was made exclusively to sweep the skies and annihilate enemy aircraft, low-flying fighter jets, and attack helicopters flying low. The idea for creating the Gepard came at the height of tension in the 1960s. The feared Bundeswehr realized that its defenses had a glaring hole. The anti-aircraft systems existing at the time, like the M42 Duster from the United States, were gradually becoming obsolete. Soviet attack aircraft were becoming absurdly faster and more agile, and attack helicopters were turning into a tactical threat that could no longer be ignored. NATO was desperate. They needed precise mobile systems and, above all, ones capable of keeping up with heavy tank convoys and infantry vehicles in the middle of crossfire, regardless of the terrain. And as a result of this desperation, two gigantic development teams made up of elite European contractors, including big names like Henton EAG, Krauss Karlsmaffei, and Bielenton, joined forces, and they began working on a worthy replacement. Several prototypes were manufactured, tested to the limit, and destroyed before the Bundeswehr made its final decision. The winning design that came out of those forges was a nightmare for enemy pilots. It was built on the robust chassis of the renowned Leopard 1 main battle tank. But pay attention to the genius behind it. Instead of equipping it with the traditional 105mm L7A3 L52 rifled cannon, the standard weapon for destroying other tanks, the Gepard was given a twin-gun setup. It was equipped with a pair of lethal Berle Bellicom KDA 35mm automatic cannons, and this is where the technical side turns into real-world impact. Each of these cannons is capable of firing an impressive 550 rounds per minute. Multiply that by 2 and you have a machine spewing out 1,100 shots per minute, tearing through the air beneath its thick steel shell. The Gepard also housed an incredibly advanced analog computerized fire control system for its time, capable of autonomous target engagement. It operated with two distinct electronic eyes, a rotating search radar on top and a tracking radar in the front. Mass production began in the mid-1970s and hundreds of Gepards were forged in factories, including the standard German version and the Dutch C1 version, which featured a CA1 installation. que ostentava uma instalação de different. Although most of this fleet remained in the ranks of the Bundeswehr and the Dutch armed forces for years on end, hundreds of other units were packed and exported to nations in Europe and around the world, including countries like Belgium, Romania, and even here in South America to Chile. During the Cold War, the apocalypse scenario for which it was designed, the Gepard became widely regarded as the most relentless anti-aircraft system on the planet. And it's not hard to understand why. It delivered brutal advantages. The first of them was independent mobility. Unlike the old and heavy-towed anti-aircraft guns, which had to be humiliatingly dragged from one place to another by trucks, the Gepard moved on its own. Built on the Leopard 1 chassis and boasting the colossal MT1, a 10-cylinder multi-fuel engine. This monster, weighing about 50 tons, was capable of reaching speeds of up to 65 km/h on roads. It had an operational range of 550 km. This means it didn't get stuck in the mud easily. It could go exactly where the Army's spearhead went. Besides that, the Gepard was a self-sufficient system. At that time, this was extremely rare. Old air defenses were fragmented. You had the radar vehicle here, the command post there, and the gunners on the other side. If communication went down, the system was dead, not the Gepard. It had absolutely everything it needed in a single piece of metal. The search radar, the tracking radar, the weapons, the ammunition, and the fire control computer. The training crew. 3 men would detect, identify, track, and engage the target in a matter of seconds, and that was the impact. A reaction time of just a few seconds makes the difference between life and death when a Soviet Mi-24 helicopter appears from behind a mountain. With 1,000 to 1,100 rounds per minute and brutal accuracy over several kilometers, the Gepard didn't fire just to land a single hit. It unleashed a solid wall of lead and shrapnel into the sky, turning the air into a deadly trap. And the great irony? Well, since it fired dumb and fast bullets, the sophisticated Soviet countermeasures of the time, like heat flares, radar jammers, and electronic warfare systems, simply didn't work against it. You can't hack a 35mm bullet flying towards you. It was the perfect weapon, but the history of the world is driven by arrogance. By the 1990s and the early 2000s, the Soviet Empire had collapsed. The Cold War ended, and the phantom threat of massive bombers crossing Central Europe disappeared from the Pentagon's plans. The world's major military powers began to look up and became obsessed with long-range surface-to-air missile systems. And suddenly a giant machine that fired bullets started to look like a Stone Age relic. The suit-wearing military planners looked to the future and predicted, with the typical arrogance of the West, that the next wars would be dominated exclusively by supersonic missiles and billion-dollar stealth fighters. They no longer saw a place on the modern battlefield for a weapon that weighed almost 50 tons, required extensive crew training, colossal logistical support, and extremely expensive mechanical maintenance. Berlin began to cut costs and could no longer justify maintaining the fleet. In addition, the Bundeswehr began to focus almost exclusively on overseas missions, sending troops to places like Afghanistan to fight against sandal-wearing insurgents. In deserts, fighting against the Taliban, you don't need a tank shooting at the skies. The Gepard became a white elephant. And so the inevitable happened. In 2010, the formidable Gepard was officially discontinued and removed from active service in Germany. It was replaced by the Weisen II light air defense system, a significantly smaller, lighter, and easier to transport vehicle. The old Gepards were thrown into dark warehouses, left to gather dust. Their fate was grim. Either the scrapyard, or they would be sold for next to nothing to nations with small military budgets that didn't mind buying Western junk. Look at the level of decay. Germany was planning to ship these war machines to Brazil and Qatar just to be used as security barriers and decorations during the Olympics and the FIFA World Cup. Until, at dawn in February 2022, the ground of Europe trembled once again. War broke out in Ukraine. Initially, the German government became a global joke. They were brutally criticized for their lack of support, with Berlin shamefully offering to send just a few thousand helmets to Kyiv while Russian missiles rained down. But on April 26, 2022, Germany announced that dozens of Gepards would be taken out of dusty storage and sent to the front lines. At least 55 of these armored vehicles were delivered. But how? Well, how did something considered obsolete and useless suddenly become the crown jewel in the most devastating war of the 21st century, you might ask? The answer is the great failure of modern intelligence. The predictions were completely wrong. When Western military planners imagined the future, they only saw hypersonic missiles. They forgot to look down. They ignored the devastating rise of unmanned aerial vehicles. Yes, my friends, drones. When Russia began launching giant swarms of Iranian Shahed suicide drones against Ukraine's cities and power infrastructure, the world panicked. Russia built giant factories and multiplied the attacks. Ukraine needed to defend itself, and the Gepard proved itself.
The perfect killer.
And if you think the problem was just hitting the target, wait until you see what we found out about the mathematics of chaos. The Gepard's efficiency didn't need any crazy modernization or 21st century tech add-on. The Ukrainians simply used the machine exactly for what it was designed for, and there are solid reasons for this success. The first and most brutal of them is the cost. This right here is the bankruptcy of modern warfare. Top-tier Western air defense systems like the powerful Patriot system from the United States are unimaginably expensive. They fire PAC-3 interceptor missiles that cost the obscene amount of $4 million each. The math makes sense. If you fire a $4 million missile to take down an enemy fighter jet worth $50 million or a ballistic missile that could kill hundreds of people. But when the Kremlin launches swarms of Shahedi drones made of plastic and lawnmower engines that cost at most a few tens of thousands of dollars each, the West's financial equation breaks down. You can't fire millions of dollars to take down something worth thousands of dollars. You'll go bankrupt before you lose the war. And this is where the analog Gravedigger shines. The 35mm cartridges for the Gepard cost only a few €100 each. Ukraine can comfortably fire hundreds or even thousands of these rounds into the air to shatter Russian swarms without the slightest concern about sinking the country's economy or depleting rare missile stocks. The second advantage was initial availability. Germany had the tanks, but there was a grim bottleneck: the ammunition. The neutral nation of Switzerland coldly blocked Germany from sending its large stockpiles of rounds manufactured on Swiss territory to Kyiv, forcing Berlin to race against time. But German industry reacted. In December 2022, the giant Remtan decided to bypass Swiss hypocrisy and built an entirely new factory from scratch. In the spring of 2023, the assembly line started running and hundreds of thousands of 35mm cartridges began pouring into Ukraine. Unlike the batteries of the Patriot system, which are constantly facing a shortage of interceptor missiles due to high global demand, forcing the Ukrainians to choose who lives and who dies when it comes to protecting a target. The Gepard has plenty of ammunition to fight every day. Now, the third advantage that humiliates Vladimir Putin's strategy is mechanical performance. The feared drones from Moscow may be cheap to produce, but they have colossal flaws. They fly low, are annoyingly slow, follow predictable GPS flight routes, and have clear radar signatures. For the analog radars from the 1970s on the Gepard, tracking a Shahed drone is like plinking cans at a shooting range. The Gepard was made to fight during the Cold War era. It engages multiple targets continuously, spreading an impenetrable cloud of shrapnel. While modern missile systems waste valuable time reloading their tubes, the Gepard keeps firing, grinding down Russian swarms and protecting power stations, industrial centers, and critical logistics depots. And the fourth advantage is tactical mobility. With the front lines stretching for hundreds of kilometers and Russia bombing the entire country, Ukraine needs to hide and move its defenses. The Gepard doesn't need to be towed. It starts its 10-cylinder engine and drives away. It is dynamically relocated on demand, changing firing positions to set up ambushes and protect infrastructure the moment intelligence intercepts information about an imminent attack. The impact of this relic on the course of history was so overwhelming that it forced a change in European defense engineering. The German government was so shocked by the lethal resurgence of the Gepard that they fast-tracked funding for the development of their new program. Sky Ranger, a modern short-range air defense system which, swallowing its own pride, shamelessly copied the basic concept of the old Gepard to fight against the new era of drones and loitering munitions. And it's not just the Gepard. Old weapons like the UK's killer pencil are also making a comeback, proving that the world underestimated brute force. Now, as a surgical exercise in strategic analysis, for those of you with a bulletproof mind, I want you to go down to our comments section right now and write down the 2 keywords that symbolize Russia's miscalculation in this scenario. I challenge you to type in all caps, the analog Gravedigger or blind swarm. I want to see who really understands that the real war isn't won just with billions of dollars, but with the right tool in the midst of chaos. Now, bringing that same cold tactical mindset to your business, the survival rule is exactly the same. Today, the most valuable currency for an entrepreneur is people's attention. Have you noticed how hard it is for the public to absorb serious content on social media? It seems like only dances or memes go viral, but that's a lie. I used to think the same way. 15 years ago, when I started in this market, it was very different. I started in the trenches of radio and television and quickly understood that the mechanism to build authority isn't luck. It mainly depends on strong content and a solid strategy. And today, many entrepreneurs want their product or service to be recognized. They want to break through the bubble. But they still haven't understood that the game now is all about media. It's about capturing attention and delivering content with real value. And that's something I've learned to do very well. Generating 50 million views every month on my social media and monetizing all of that in dollars. Now see what CIMED did to triple its sales to new heights. A traditional pharmaceutical company understood that, above all, it needed to become a media company first. Look at the Haven stores. Haven's owner got on camera and hasn't stopped opening new stores. Store after store, and still making profits. In the middle of this crisis that Brazil is going through. My friends, the undeniable reality is that your identity cannot be outsourced. The business owner needs to put himself out there and set the vision to have this clarity and show his strength. That time is over when you could just record any way you wanted with your phone, with no authority at all, and still make sales. Today, that space is dried up. It's bloody, fiercely competitive, and depends on elite professionalism. So, if you want to gain unquestionable authority and showcase your work in a serious and professional way, I created a hands-on intensive to guide and support you in building that authority on social media. Do you need to make the algorithm work for you? Is that what allows you to have more margin, serve much better clients, and have access to things that were previously completely restricted? On July 12th, I will host this immersion completely in person, face-to-face with me here in my professional studio with my team in Curitiba. It will be a practical meeting restricted to an elite group of only 10 people, and I will personally guide you so your business can stand out with a killer method. But I need to be blunt about the numbers. There are only 10 seats. When the 10th spot is taken, the heavy steel door closes and that's it. I'm sure you understand everything I'm saying, you just don't know how to put it into practice. Well, the QR code is on the screen now. Access the secure link in the description and in the first pinned comment, or type "I want it" and I'll send you the link. Secure your spot immediately and shield your communication. Expand your presence. And for you, a strategist with bulletproof vision who demands excellence. Even when it's time to clear your mind and look for entertainment on the weekend, stop wasting your precious few hours of rest scrolling through confusing catalogs looking for movies that aren't worth it. Check out our channel today for tips on series and movies. We offer a fully curated selection with no woke culture, no whining, just for you to enjoy with your family. So the link is in the description, in the pinned comment, and in the card that will appear on your screen. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and leave a like on the video because it takes a lot of work to make. Shield your mind. I'm Shimon Oliveira, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.